These are video notes on calculating percent of change. Just so that you know what a percent of change is, it'll be when you have something that increases by a certain amount or decreases by a certain amount, and that will be represented as a percentage. So for example, if you have yogurt with 30% less fat than before, or if your drink has 40% more ounces than it did before, all of those are percent of change. To start, we're going to look at our formula for percent of change. This is what you're going to use every single time that you try to calculate this out. So you're always going to write down your formula first. The percent of change formula is going to be the amount of change divided by the original amount. In order to find your amount of change, you are going to be using subtraction. We'll go ahead and give ourselves a reminder. And the original amount is always going to be the first number you see. So we'll put a reminder here. All right, and now we're ready to use our formula and see what this actually looks like. It says to identify the change as either a percent of increase or decrease. Once we've done that, we can calculate out the exact percent of change. In general, if you have an amount that goes up, that would be a percent of increase. If your amount goes down, that would be a percent of decrease. So we have 14 increasing to 21, so we're looking for a percent of increase. We're going to start off with our formula. Amount of change divided by original amount. Once you've written that in, we will plug in our numbers to calculate this. So amount of change, it went from 14 up to 21, so I can subtract to find out exactly how much that is. And then whatever I get, I'm going to divide it by the original amount, which was 14. That was the first number that we see there. So now when I start to simplify, 21 minus 14 is 7, and the original amount is still 14. So now we just need to change 7/14 into a percent. This one is actually pretty friendly because it does simplify down to the fraction 1/2. And if I convert 1/2 into a decimal or a percent, it's going to be 50%. We can work that out. Just as a reminder, your top number goes inside the box, bottom number goes outside, 2 goes into 1 0 times. So we'll add a decimal point with a 0, and 2 goes into 10 exactly 5 times. So we'll get a decimal of 5/10, and then whenever you have a decimal, you're going to multiply by 100 to turn it into a percent. So 5/10 multiplied by 100 would then be 50%. So my percent of change comes out to a 50% increase because I went up. So I do need to make sure that I have that word increase at the end. Okay, so if you start at 14 cars and then go up to 21 cars, that would be a 50% increase. Okay, next we're looking at jelly bean amounts. This time it went from 20 down to 15, so we're actually calculating a percent of decrease. We are still going to start with the formula. So the amount of change was 20 minus 15, so basically we went down by 5 jelly beans, and we're going to divide that by the original amount of 20. So we have 5/20. Just like before, it kind of makes this easier if I simplify the fraction. 1/4, hopefully you know what that is as a decimal and a percent, but if not, we can go ahead and divide it out. 1 divided by 4. 4 goes into 10 twice, and then we'll keep adding zeros until we don't have a remainder. 4 goes into 20 5 times. And now we're done with that. So we get the decimal 25/100ths, and just like before, to change this into a percent, I'm going to multiply by 100 to get 25%. So again, that should look familiar. 1/4 equals 25%. And since this went down, that would be a 25% decrease. Okay, third example of percent of change. We're looking at 5 monkeys increasing to 13 monkeys. So again, start with your formula. The amount of change will be 13 minus 5, and always just put the bigger number first when you subtract, so do the absolute value of how much it changed by. And then we're going to divide by the original amount of 5. So 13 minus 5 is 8. And now we need to change 8/5 into a percent. So I'm going to divide 8 by 5. 8 goes in the box. 5 goes into 8 one time. And then we'll go ahead and add our decimal points. 5 goes into 30 exactly 6 times. So I get 1 6/10 as my decimal. To change that to a percent, we're just going to multiply by 100. So that's going to be 160%. So it is okay to have a percent that is over 100. Basically, that just means 100% represents doubling. So if it had gone to 10 monkeys, that would have been exactly 100% increase. If it's 160%, it just means it's going up by more than double. So my final answer, I have a 160% increase. All right, next couple examples, we're going to have the percent of change and find the new amount. So if the old package had 8 cookies, but now it's advertising that there's 25% more than there were before, we'll be able to find how many cookies are in the package now. To do that, I want to start by finding 25% of 8. You can change 25% as a fraction and multiply. I like to change my percents to decimals, and then the word of tells me that I'm going to multiply. So I'm going to do 25 hundredths multiplied by 8, and 25 multiplied by 8 is 200, and then my decimal is going to move over 2 spots. And so 25% of 8 is equal to 2. So I started at 8 cookies, and now I'm going to add in 2 additional cookies. So for my final answer, the new package would have 10 cookies. All right, and last one, same idea. This time we have a percent of decrease. So we have 20 grams of sugar decreased by 30%. So I will find 30% of 20, which is the same as multiplying 30 hundredths multiplied by 20. So you can set that up if you need to. 3 times 2 is 6, and then there's going to be 2 zeros after it for 30 times 20, and then we'll move our decimal point back over 2 places for the 30 hundredths that we had. So 30% of 20 is 6, and now this time, since it was a percent of decrease, we're just going to subtract the 6. So 20 minus 6 is 14. And then our units for that, we would write grams of sugar. So if the package is advertising that there is 30% less sugar, if there used to be 20 grams, we would expect that there are now 14 grams of sugar. All right, that concludes percent of change notes. Final reminder is that you must be using your formula in order to get the correct answer. There's not a way to do this without plugging things into the formula. Okay, good luck and thank you for watching.